Streaming. Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the wasmCloud community meeting for Wednesday, October the 4th. We've got an agenda up, but we've actually, we're going to shoehorn in something right at the beginning here. Taylor has an update on how wasmFill generation is going and maybe some stuff about recent brainstorming. Wahaha. Taylor, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, so I actually had gone back to use in the REST ecosystem, cargo component is quickly stabilizing to be like a way that allows you to select different components and things. So I had done the work there, but I was talking with Roman, who's not on the call today, one of the REST host maintainers, and he had this idea before and brought it up again about basically dynamically generating wasmFills on the fly. So let me blow your brains for a second. If you had seen the previous stuff that I was showing, we were generating code that would do the wasmFill, and you push it up, and then at runtime or before you ran the actor, you'd have to smush everything all together. Compose it is the actual word, but we like calling it smush. And that was the plan of what we were going to do. But the thing is, because WebAssembly modules have their interface definitions embedded within them, we're able to look at what things an actor is importing and exporting, and we can actually dynamically generate the stubs that do the encoding for it on the fly. And so the thing is pretty much everyone right now is using, whether they know it or not, message pack underneath the hood to send the messages back and forth across the wire. And one of the things we had for wasmFills, we wanted to keep it, you were able to support custom encryption or frame buffering or whatever you might have to do for your job underneath the hood for the actual message. And we still will be able to support that, I think, in the future this way via WASI plugins, right? So you write a plugin for a serialization protocol, register it with the host as a plugin, and then it can use that serialization protocol. So that's a future thing. But right now, essentially, you could just write your component, bring your component, the host will dynamically generate the stubs to do the serialization for it and do that just on the fly. So I'm going to be spiking that. And then I will update the wasmFill RFC. Actually, it'll just be closing the wasmFill RFC, which is just a nice thing to do in this case. So anyway, that's why I had an evil laugh before the live stream started, was because if we can get this working, it means none of this has to be in wash. You just build your component, sign it, give it to us, and then bam, we're good to go. So that is a hopeful future here. We're going to try to do it and see how it goes, but that could be much, much cleaner and better than having to do the other stuff that we're doing. So I am perfectly fine throwing my baby out the door here with the bathwater and starting with this. So I'm going to try spiking it out over the next week or so and seeing if I can get it. So that's the current state of stuff right now. Basically, work is in flight, and we found maybe a better way to do it.
Hey, that sounds great. I'll take that any day of the week.
Like I said, lots of talking. I don't have the actual thing to show yet, but I'm hoping that I can at least have something hacky showing next week to kind of demo and say, like, here's how it works, and show it working inside of a host, and that'll be pretty awesome.
Yeah, Taylor, things seem to be moving so quickly. I mean, obviously, your example that you wrote and is not like in our documentation or whatever may or may not be thrown away. What do you think? When do you think we're going to start being able to put documentation around this, or just like basic things may break, who knows, examples? We've had a couple of questions in the community Slack around like building off of our component examples and like when to get started with stuff like that.
So that's it's slightly tangential question. It's not a perfect like 90-degree like perpendicular tangent, but it's a tangent. And so the whole purpose of what we're doing here is actually, if we can get this generating in the wasmFills on the fly essentially in the host, that means we don't even have to add any documentation to that. So that means that's another bonus, is you don't even have to understand about wasmFills. None of that matters. But as for the actual, like when you can use components, that stuff, that's just going to be breaking. And we're trying to update the documentation. But like, for example, we just had a bunch of big things like resources land inside of WASI, which we haven't added support for that yet, but we have to once preview 2 hits stable, things won't change as much. But right now, if you're a little bit adventurous, it won't be terribly difficult to do these updates here in the future, especially as we update some of our examples to use something like cargo component here in the near future. So right now, if you're really interested in the component part, you'll have to hit us up, just because it's changing so fast that the effort we put into documenting it would then be out of date in a couple weeks. And so, yeah, I've seen those. For those of you who have been asking in the community Slack, if you're looking for something stable to do right now, use the old Smithy stuff for now, and then we'll let you know when everything's been stabilized along with preview 2. If you're in it for the yeehaw get on your horse adventure, then please let us know and we'll guide you through some of the steps, because I literally just had to go update one of our component examples from 4 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. So it's just a very fast moving thing, and we're trying to keep up with it as much as we can.
Liam, you get your hand up.
Yes. So Taylor, a quick question. Are you and Roman camped out in a certain Slack channel where you guys are, moving fast and iterating through this on Slack? Is that where folks can follow along? I may not be a cowboy like Yordis, but I maybe like to go watch the rodeo from time to time.
Right now, this was all just we literally were just talking today. It was just hey, and just chatting. And so we're going to probably have an RFC up for a lot of the things. We've been talking, we've had a desire to do things like WASI providers for a long time, and I'm pretty sure Roman's working on something there that he'll open up sooner rather than later. So all these things will start happening on GitHub, and then right now I'm going to spike. So I all of you who are in the Slack have seen me post when I get something working. I generally post some sort of badly narrated demo video in there, so you can see what I'm doing when I'm spiking on something. But once I have the spike, then I'll create actual tasks to wrap it all up and put the documentation in, and people can follow along mostly on GitHub with that.
Well, yippee-ki-yay.
I can't finish that on a recorded call. Anyway, that's it. Brooks, any other questions from the audience? Okay, Brooks, back to you.
All right. I will not continue my job as audience plant. I think it's probably worth, as we keep working on this kind of stuff, revisiting our roadmap through the end of the year, because I think we've completed 80 or maybe even 90% of the tasks that we put on the roadmap. And I think that those last ones are probably going to take the bulk of the effort, just because of the reliance on lots of things moving in the broader ecosystem, lots of things moving in the wasmCloud ecosystem. So it may be worth taking a look at our roadmap, and if we want to pull anything else in that we can kind of work on in the background on the same thing. But that's really just, maybe we can do another visit on that next week. All right. Well, I can go ahead and share the official agenda for today, which we are going to continue to cowboy lasso something, rearrange this just by flipping the order of discussions. I had a placeholder here for a demo, and I unfortunately couldn't pull it together in time. So very sorry about that. We'll get to that. We'll get to that one next week. But what I really want to talk about as we get started is Hacktoberfest. If you aren't familiar with Hacktoberfest, this is the 10th year of DigitalOcean hosting this event, where you essentially get on hacktoberfest.com, get on this website, you start participating, and any open source maintainer is able to designate their repository or individual issues as something that goes towards Hacktoberfest. And the really cool thing about this is that really all you need to participate and complete Hacktoberfest is to close or have approved pull requests on GitHub. I think it does GitLab also. And I think you need 4. And as long as you do that, DigitalOcean and the Hacktoberfest, I don't know if that's an individual org, will plant a tree and give you a digital GitHub badge kind of in your honor of contributing to open source. So it's a super cool event. I think this is the first year that we are actually officially partaking in this. But for this, you will see all you have to do if you want to partake. Obviously, it is free, all about open source. You can come to the website and sign up as a contributor and start hacking. And the way that it works is on, for example, wasmCloud. You can see now that the wasmCloud main organization has this Hacktoberfest discussion topic. And if you look at, I think I actually only designated ones in WASH so far. If you look at some of the issues in WASH, they have this awesome Halloween orange logo here for Hacktoberfest. Essentially, what we're going to do on the wasmCloud side is designate a lot of our good first issues and some additional maybe stretch goals for Hacktoberfest in issues and our main repos. And the whole goal is to lower the barrier for people introducing themselves into open source, to contributing. And it's kind of all under the same umbrella. I'm sure many other organizations and open source projects are going to do the same thing. So I just wanted to let you all know, first and foremost, that we're going to be doing this. Hacktoberfest officially starts tomorrow, I believe, at 1 p.m. something time, 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So I guess it is 1 p.m. somewhere. But it's going to officially kick off tomorrow. So we'll be doing the same thing. But just wanted to talk about it here, let people know what we were going to do, and encourage you, if you are partaking in Hacktoberfest, to take a look at some of the things that we're putting out there. We'd love to. We're on our side and the maintainer side, and we're of course going to be focused on approving those PRs. If there's changes to be requested, all that stuff, getting back to you as soon as possible so that it can count towards your whole Hacktoberfest number. Any questions or comments on Hacktoberfest?
I actually do have one. So I don't know if it was just me, but it was kind of difficult to get the link to the community meeting. So I checked everywhere. So I think like if that's more accessible or somewhere, that might be helpful.
Yeah, I think that would be super helpful for getting people more into the community and active. Where did you end up finding the link to the community meeting?
So I knew that the meeting was on Wednesdays from your GitHub repository, and I saw that there was an automated thing that set a reminder. So I just waited for the reminder for the next week.
Okay, yeah. Why don't I take that as an action item to do at least before tomorrow, before we get started, because it would be a little out of sorts. It would be great to have that in a couple of places, something really discoverable. And really just to get people in here, get in the Slack, because that's where we're the most active. It's a great suggestion. Yeah, this is my first time actually participating and hosting as a maintainer in Hacktoberfest. I think a couple of people on the wasmCloud side had done it before, or at least have participated. So if anybody's hosted as a project maintainer before, please feel free to give tips. If you want to reach out to me on the wasmCloud or the CNCF Slack too, I'll definitely take that. All right, well, everyone keep an eye out for that. Tomorrow we'll do some kind of official, hello, welcome, we're doing Hacktoberfest announcement, but not too much there. Just looking forward to seeing folks contribute, especially if you're watching or new. Can't wait to see what you come up with. All right, for the last planned discussion item of today, I wanted to queue up something that I actually don't have a perfect, well, I don't know if I ever have a perfect answer for things, but I don't have a perfect answer for this. And I really wanted to have a discussion about versioning and what a release version means in the context of the entire wasmCloud ecosystem. I noticed something in so Docusaurus is the tool that we use for documentation and our website and blogs and all of that stuff. And Docusaurus has a bunch of different features, one of which that I've been really interested in for a while is the version feature. So if you're browsing their documentation and you know that you're on Docusaurus version 2.0.1, you can select that version and then it changes the context, the content of the rest of the documentation based on that version. Now, I know things are going to be breaking, things are going to be changing often in the wasmCloud ecosystem. We'll release host version 0.78, and then we may release host version 0.79, which moves to a new version of Wasm time, a new version of the Wasm tools, and things may technically change as we do that. So I don't necessarily want to start maintaining a really really fine-grained representation of all of our versions here quite yet. But as we get closer and closer to stability, I think it'd be really important to be able to designate that between different versions of the documentation. And the thing that I'm not exactly sure how we want to represent on the wasmCloud side is, if you're browsing documentation and you come to the let's see, I'm going to use our super cool new search thing to find this. If you go to the WASH documentation, right? This specific feature for context is new in WASH 0.7. Of course, we're about to release WASH like 0.20, so it's not like many folks are on a previous version of this, but this is a type of page that wouldn't show if we had full versioning and you were on a previous version of the documentation. However, wasmCloud isn't just a single binary. It's not a single project or repository. A version of wasmCloud is essentially some combination of the wasmCloud version, the version of WASH that you're using, the version of Wadum that you're using to deploy your applications, and things like that. So without overcomplicating it, I feel like the right thing to do is to call a wasmCloud version the version of the host that we're releasing. And essentially the host version that we release has associated versions of tools that support it. So we release wasmCloud 0.78. Wadum 0.7 has support for that version of the host and depends on features in that version of the host. WASH 0.20 launches version 0.78 of the wasmCloud host, things like that. I wanted to kind of throw that idea out there, and would definitely take advice from anyone who's managed an open source project across different versions and doing different versions in documentation, because I just want to make sure that our documentation is best representative of like what people are doing in the ecosystem at the time. So this is kind of just I don't have a concrete suggestion or like an RFC on what to call a wasmCloud version, but figured I'd just open it up for discussion and go from there. Lively bunch today. Kind of I get it. It's a less, it's more about our documentation and how we're releasing versions. Again, I don't think that this is something that we're going to action on right away. I think it really becomes more prevalent once we start calling for a certain level of stability, especially with things that are changing outside of the wasmCloud ecosystem that we depend on. Yeah, Kevin?
Yeah, I think the way I've kind of measured this in the past is how important is it that old versions of the documentation coexist at the same time as the newest version of the documentation. So in a lot of projects, the newest version of the docs is really all that matters. And the old stuff is just marked as deprecated or things like that. When you start having a project that's big enough that you have things where you're labeling them like long-term support or things like that, then it makes sense to have, you know, two different versions of the docs. But if you're just rapidly iterating and producing, you know, version 79, version 80, version 81, and there isn't that much of a group of people that are running, you know, version 79 and need version 79 specific docs, then it feels like it might be confusing to people rather than enlightening. So I guess put another way is when you have multiple concurrent supported long-term releases, then, and those are different enough that the docs need to change, then I think something like this makes sense. But until you have something like that, it feels like it might just be either distracting or end up being a lot of time and effort to maintain.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Leland?
Yeah, I'm with Kevin on this. Burn the ships. You know, just leave it behind, move on. WebAssembly's moving far too quickly right now, and we've been helping it to move far too quickly this year to go back. So I think we, for the time, we stick here. Maybe when we get to WASI Preview 2, that may make sense. But even then, I know as soon as we hit WASI Preview 2, we're all going to be looking ahead to WASI Preview 3, async, iterating for the HTTP server. You know, we've talked through what the world's going to look like, and I don't think anybody's going to want to go back.
Yeah, I think I think that makes a lot of sense. I think we're moving just a little far too quickly to try and call right now something that we want to preserve a set of documentation for. Sounds like being very clear about what version of wasmCloud we're on right now. And, you know, if we introduce documentation for a new feature, maybe having a little sparkly at the top saying, hey, this was introduced in 0.79 is really the higher level effort of due diligence that we should be responsible for at this point. Yeah, yours.
No, yeah, I was about to say that maybe, although don't complicate it with trying to maintain the history of the old versions, at the very least put like a tag, something simple enough where the reader could say, "Oh, I'm in the old version. This was not working."
Yeah,
like that could be just good enough. Or like from here forward, you could follow this guideline, and yeah.
Yep, I think that aligns exactly with what I was thinking. So, you know, we're not really, the whole point of mentioning versions in our documentation, especially at this stage, is not to be able to preserve like an old set of functionality, or, you know, old being like a week ago. It's more around so that if you hit our documentation and you have, you know, you're 2 versions behind on the tooling and you expect to see something and you don't, that it's really clear that something new comes with the new version. I know that we've talked about some automated methods of getting this to work too, like when you run a wash command and you're on wash 0.18, it'll notify you with like a little warning log saying like, or an info log, be like, hey, you know, wash 0.21 is out. You should go download that, or run wash update to do it for you, things like that. Okay, great. I'm happy to keep having the discussion if people have other thoughts. I'm pretty happy with where we landed. So. All right. Well, that is what we had on the agenda for today. So, that's just kind of what we planned for demos and discussions. Anybody have a topic for the, just general wasmCloud or broader WebAssembly ecosystem that they'd like to talk about? Give a couple of minutes for free time. All right, folks, it must be a little bit of a quiet Wednesday. I think I'll take that one and say we'll go ahead and wrap this one up a little bit early. But thanks for the great discussion, pointed advice on versions, Hacktoberfest, WasIFills, all that stuff. So looking forward to getting back to our normal mix of demos and discussion next week. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much. I'll go ahead and top off the screen, and then, or Dave, I saw you on mute. Just let me know. If
Oh no, I was just gonna say thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Signing off. So
yeah, we'll see you all next week.
Gives me some